V'daber Hashem el Moshe v'Aaron leimor. Ish shall diglo v'osas v'esavosam. Each person means each tribe had their own flag. Rashi later explains that, on the Choshen, the breastplate, which the Kohen Gadol wore on his chest, each tribe had a stone. Each stone had another name, and each stone had another color. The color of the stone on the breastplate, the color of the flag was the same color as that stone. That was the degel, and also it had some kind of, whatever it may have been, had a lion on it, or it had a boat representing what that tribe represented. So Ishal Diglo Ba'osos. Each tribe had its degel, its flag, to identify its tribe, Ba'osos, with signs. We'll see Rashi what this means with signs. Vesavosam, based on the paternal line. Yachnu b'nei Yisrael. That's how they should camp. Mineged soviv l'ol moed yachnu. Encircling the ol moed. That's the way they should camp. Let's take a look in Rashi. Ba'osos. Osos means signs. Kol degel yelo os. Every flag had a sign. Mapet tzvua pluyabo. There was a cloth that was dyed. Tzvo shel zeh, look, tzvo shel zeh. The color of one flag was not the color of the other flag. Seva kol echad kigavan avna akfu b'choshen. The color of the flag was the same color as the stone that was in the choshen, in the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol. Umiktoch kach kol echad yaker is diglo. That's how you were able to identify that encampment, where exactly that tribe was supposed to be. Davar acher, another interpretation of osos, ba'osos leveisavosam, the sign which was dedicated or set in place by the forefather. Ba'oshe Moslim Yaakov Aviyim. It was the sign which Yaakov had given them Shenosu Mitzrayim, when they took his remains out of Egypt and they carried him from Mitzrayim to Canaan to be buried. He gave a specific order how he should be carried and how they should be situated. Shenema v'yasu bonov Cain, v'yasu bonov lo Cain, kashet tzivon. His sons did to him as such as he commanded them. Yehuda Yisachar Zvulun. Yehuda Yisachar Zvulun Yisov ben HaMizrach. They carried him. They were on the eastern side of his remains. Ruvain Shimon v'Gad min Adoram. They were from the south. Kedis b'tan Chuma. Parsha Zu. So Osos l'Beisavosa means as Yaakov had instructed him, as he should be carried. That's the way the formation of the encampment will be. Mineged, merchuk mil, kmo shenema v'Yoshua, achrochu giyeh beinechem bein kalpayim amo. Shuchalov v'Shabbos, Moshe v'Aaron bonof haLevim, chon samach lo. Okay? Now, what is the formation or the order which they carried Yaakov? What Roman says? He says that's the way the encampment should be, and that's the way you should travel. As I'm telling you to carry me, in terms of my children being on various sides of my remains, when you take me from Mitzrayim to buried in Eretz Yisrael, identically that will be the formation of your travels and your encampments in the future. What does one thing have to do with another? Okay? We once mentioned that the name of Rabbeinu Bachya, that Yaakov is referred to as Bechir Shebavos. He was the most special of the patriarchs. Well, it's evident he was most special because he fathered the 12 tribes, and Avram and Yitzchak were not able to father the 12 tribes. He had the level of purity. If you remember, we had said when he was in Har Moriah, when he had fallen asleep, he took 12 stones and he encircled his head with those 12 stones, and there was a Kabbalah, it was passed down tradition that whichever patriarch will father the 12 stones, the 12 tribes, he is the special patriarch. Meaning he achieved the level that he is able to establish the Jewish people, the Klal Yisrael. He took 12 stones, and it was an indication that he had achieved a level of purity within himself that he was able to father the children of the Yud Beis Shvatim, the 12 tribes. And it says he took stones, and when he awoke, he took the stone. That means all 12 were fused into one. So to him, that was an indication that he is the Av of Klal Yisrael. He's the father of Klal Yisrael. And then so Visa Raglo, Vayelech, he was ecstatic. He was like walking on air when he left Har Moriah, knowing who he is and what his objective is. That he was meant to father the 12 tribes and how he has to mentor them and so on and so forth. So over there, Rabbeinu Bachya writes, it's in Parashat Vayigash, we find that when Yaakov had gone to Egypt, how many people did he go with? Family members. It says, B'shivim nefesh, yardu avasedim Mitzrayim. There were 70 individuals, 70 souls had gone to Egypt together with Yaakov. And then it goes and it identifies them, his children, his grandchildren, the males, the females, they all together came to Egypt with Yaakov. 70 Shivim Nefesh. And the Torah makes it a point, Shivim Nefesh. What is the Shivim Nefesh? So Rabbeinu Bachya writes over there that whatever HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in the spiritual world, his representation, the way he's seen, Yaakov is a reflection of that spiritual infrastructure in the physical world. And he goes to explain. He says, and this based on Kabbalah, that we speak about the heavenly throne of Hashem, the Kisei HaKavod. The heavenly throne. Now, what encircles the Kisei HaKavod of Hashem? He says the four groups of malachim, of angels, who encircle the throne. And the four groups together are comprised of 70 malachim. So 70 malachim encircle, four groups encircle the Kisei HaKavod. And from who do all these angels emanate from? They emanate from Hashem, because he wills their existence. Yaakov had children from four wives, two of them matriarchs, two of them concubines, Rachel, Leah, Bilhah, and Zilpah. How many children and descendants did he have from these four wives? Shivim Nefesh. Who fathered them all? It was Yaakov. Yaakov was the grandfather. So just as HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the center, and he has the four groupings, which together are 70, Yaakov on the terrestrial level is a reflection of the heavenly throne and the retinue of angels which encircle the Kisei HaKavod. And he writes over there, he says, you see, Kama Ov, Hoya Yaakov Yitzhak HaKadosh Baruch Hu, how beloved Yaakov, being so special, that he himself is a representation, a reflection of what exactly the heavenly retinue looks like. That's Rabbeinu Bachya. So Yaakov himself is the equivalent of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's representation in this world. And when we went to Egypt, the numbers and the makeup were four groups, because they came from four mothers, and he was the 71. He was the 71st. That's Rabbeinu Bachya. Okay? Now, if you remember, we have mentioned a Ramban at Har Moriah. He says Yaakov had a dream, which was a prophecy. He saw angels ascending, descending, and it says, "V'Hashem Omid Olav." God stood up on top of that ladder. So Rabbeinu Bach over there, the Ramban writes, what does the Torah tell us? He stood on top of that ladder. Yaakov had seen in his prophecy Hashem on top of the ladder. So he writes over there, David says in Tehillim that we speak about Maloch of Yishmor. Person has a malach that protects him. Hashem had said to Yaakov, although others need Malochim to protect him, you don't need a malach. Because you're always bound to me at a level, you need no protection. I mean, even though we find that Hashem said, we find there was a retinue of malachim that escorted him outside of Eretz till the border of Eretz, and a new group took over afterwards. Remember, Machnayim, there were two camps. The camp of the angels, which represented Eretz Yisrael, the camp which represented Chutz La'aretz. When he went to Lavan, on the way back, they escorted him to the border, and then the other group came, and it wasn't for Shmir. That was out of respect. But Hashem personally was the one who oversaw and watched him. This is Ramban. So when it says Hashem Omid Olav, he said to him, from now on, you are the one you need, because of who you are, you need no protection from Elohim, because you're always with me. And because I'm always with you, therefore you need no Malach to protect you. That's the Ramban. Take a look in the Ramban there. We'd spoken about the whole idea of Sukkot is 7 days, Shmini Atzeres is the 8th day. So although Sukkot, we always see Sukkot and Shmini Atzeres basically as one holiday, it's not one Yom Tov. Gemara says that Shmini Atzeres is Chag B'fnei Atzmo. It's a separate regal. We say Shechionu. There are many different. We don't take the Daled Minim. We don't sit in the Sukkah any longer on Shmini Atzeres. Sukkot is a 7-day Yom Tov. Shmini Atzeres is regular from the Atzmo. It's a separate regal, separate festival. So we see, what is the concept of Sukkah? Sukkah is the Anei HaKavod. It represents the clouds of glory which protect us in the desert. That's what it was. So when we sit in the Sukkah for 7 days, we have that protection. The Daled Minim represent whatever, to ward off the many things which are negative. The 8th day, it's the Yom Tiv. A Yom Tiv, we don't need the Sukkah. We don't have any longer the Daled Minim. So what does that say? And of course, says, Kosher Predasken. There's a level of intimacy on the 8th day. We don't need any protection. We're so connected and attached to God on the 8th day, you need no protection. You don't need the Sukkah any longer. During the 7 days, it's not that level of relationship. Therefore, you have to sit in that Sukkah, you need it, which represent the Anei HaKavod. But when you're with me at that special level, you need no protection any longer. It's similar, we're talking about Klal Yisrael at that level. It's similar to what? To Yaakov, after Hamari, Hashem says, you don't need Malachim to protect you any longer. Because of our nature, of our relationship, being with me means you need no protection, because I'm with you. Okay, that's the idea. Now, the Gemara says in a number of places, 2 places, or 3, who merited to be the host of the Shechina in the Beis HaMikdash? The Aron, in whose portion was the Aron, the Holy of Holies, in whose portion was it? It was in the portion of Binyamin. Binyamin's portion. Why did he merit it should be in his portion? Because Binyamin wanted, more than all the other Shvatim, to be the host of the Shechina. It's something he craved for, to the point where he was consumed with that desire, he should be the host of the Shechina. And because he had that desire more than the other brothers, therefore Hashem gave him the gift that you'll be my host. And therefore, the Gemara says, Binyamin is ushvizichne shel Shechina. He's the host of the Shechina. The Aron lies in his portion. That's the Gemara in 2 places, 3rd place for some other reason. Okay? So the reason the Gemara explains, this is the Bavli, is because he wanted to such a degree more, and he was consumed by this desire to be the host. Hashem gave him that gift. You will be the host. However, if the Yalkut in Pashas Zos HaBrocha offers another reason. Why was Binyamin why was he the host of the Shechina? Binyamin was the youngest child of Yaakov. He was the true Ben Zekunim. He was born to him in his oldest age. Yaakov, when he was older, it wasn't so simple for him to walk. So when he walked, Binyamin would walk with him, and he would lean on Binyamin's shoulder for support. So because Yaakov had leaned on Binyamin for support, Therefore, he merited to be the host of the Shekhinah, just as he supported his father. He will support the location of the Aron, that the Aron will be in his portion. So I asked, what's one thing after another? See, so he supported his father. His father leaned on him. The answer is, with this Rebbeinu Bachya, it's very good. Because what does Yaakov represent? Yaakov is the equivalent of the Shekhinah in every aspect in this world. So that Binyamin supported him. Who was he supporting? This was the representation of the Shekhinah. As a result of that, as you supported your father, who was the equivalent of my representation here, and my relation with him, therefore the Beis Hamikdash will be built, you will be the host of my presence, and therefore the Aron dwells in the portion of Binyamin. That's how I understood it. Second interpretation, Rashi says, osos. You will travel, Degel, and osos. Could you hold just one moment, please? So he says, Yaakov, he had said to his children, the way you will carry me from Egypt to the Mars Machpelah, that formation in the future, that will be the formation of your travels and in your encampments. What is one thing after another? The answer, exactly what we're saying. The Shekhinah was where? The Shekhinah was the center camp. The Levium encircled the center camp, and now you have the formation of the groupings on every side. So Yaakov, as you carry me, Yehuda, Yisachar, Zvulun is on the east, and you carry me going forward, and the others are to the other sides. Identically, in the Midbar, that's going to be your formation. That's where you're going to travel. So with this, it's very good. One thing after another. The answer is, who is Yaakov? Yaakov is what? Is the Shekhinah. Represents God's presence in this world. So as Yaakov set that formation then, that is the formation of the future. Klal Yisrael encircling the Shekhinah, it's identically the same. That's the understanding of this. Find that Pesach, we have symbolisms. We have matzah, which is the Doraisa. We have Korban Pesach, and we have the Moror with the Korban Pesach. So we have symbolisms of what Pesach is about. Sukkos, we have Sukkah, we have the Daled Minim, the 4 species. That is Sukkos. Shavuos is what? Is Maman Torasenu. There's no symbolism for Shavuos on an individual, on a personal level. I mean, they bring the Shtei Alechem, they bring that special meal offering made of the new grain, which is wheat, which is chametz, that's brought on Shavuos. But in terms of Klal Yisrael themselves, it's like we have to observe it as a Yom Tov. Rosh Hashanah, we have a shofar. Yom Kippur, we fast. Shavuos, what's so special that we identify somehow Shavuos as being Shavuos? We observe the day. We don't do any creative activity which is not food related. That's what Shavuos is. What is Shmini Atzeres? Shmini Atzeres is exactly as Shavuos. 7 days we sit in the sukkah, we take the 4 species. Day comes, it's Yom Tiv. Again, restricted to any creative activity if it's not food related. Exactly the same. So there's an interesting Yalkut that says really Shmini Atzeres should have been 50 days after Sukkot, as Shavuos is 50 days after Pesach. Should be the same. Except, why isn't it? Why does Hashem have it immediately after Sukkot? Because since it would be 50 days later, it would be in the winter, and there would be an obligation of Aliyas HaRegel, the Jews would have to travel back to Yerushalayim. They'd have to trudge through the winter rains and the snow and all that. So not to bring this hardship on Klal Yisrael, he said, you're here, let's do Shmini Atzeres, rather than you coming back. But in fact, Shmini Atzeres is the same as what? As Shavuos. It should be 50 days later. What is Shavuos? Shavuos is Matan Torah Seder. What was that? We became the Am Hashem. We became the Goy Kodesh. we developed an eternal relationship where God's presence is inextricably attached to us, which can never be separated. That is what Shavuos is. When you have that, there's no such thing as symbolisms. What is the day? It's the relationship, a relationship of one of a kind. What is Shmini Atzeres? Shmini Atzeres is exactly, according to the Maral, Shmini at 50 is what? Represents number 8. It's the number that follows 7 times 7. That's L'malam in Ateva. That represents something which is supernatural. That's what Shavuos is. Identically, Shmini Atzeres is 8, except it should have been 50, except because Hashem, for our sake, didn't want us to inconvenience ourselves, to come back in the winter, therefore it's immediate. So it's the same thing. When you're that attached to Hashem, you need those symbolisms. You know, a person who has a diplomat, lahavdil, you have to have certain diplomatic papers to identify you as that diplomat. What about if you walk hand in hand with the king? You need no identification. It's obvious. If you're that close with the king, that means you're royalty. Otherwise, the king will not have that level of relationship with you. When we separate, then you have to identify yourself. Who are you? So Shavuos is Zman Natan Torah Seinu. Shmini Atzeres is the equivalent of Shavuos. There's no sukkah, there's no daled minim. We need nothing, because that's the level of dveikus, of attachment we have to Hashem, and therefore there's no symbolisms during these 2 days.
Rabbi, I was always curious.
It says Moshe had spoken, Hashem spoke to Moshe b'Midbar Sinai. So it cites a pasuk, a verse in Yirmiyah. Hador atem rutvar Hashem. This generation, see the word of Hashem. Hamidbar ha'yishel Yisrael. Em eretz mafelio. It's a question. Was I like a desert to the Jewish people, a land of mafelio, from Ophel, which is darkened? Meaning, did I treat the Jews as if they were in a desert, in a darkened location, in a desolation? What does Hashem say? Originally, you came with a complaint against Moshe Rabbeinu. You took us out of Egypt to die in the desert. That was the complaint. Hamidbar Yisrael Israel. Factually speaking, although you were in the desert, did I treat you as if you were in the desert? Did I do to you and you suffered as if you were in a desert? Or I conducted myself? He says, normally, what is the state if a person finds himself in a desert? A mortal king, whoever he may be, when he goes out to the desert. Is he a state of tranquility when he's in the desert, as if when he's in his own palace? It's not the same. When you're in desert, you're in a desert. There's certain compromise on your tranquility and even on the amenities when you're in the desert. And where are you coming from? When you're in Egypt, which is an inhabited location, you were slaves. I took you out of slavery, out of bondage. And I prepared for you these reclining beds, which is considered a very luxurious amenity. My vayasev, what does it mean? He encircled them. I gave you an accommodation, the royal suite. You were like in the royal suite. And I appointed 3 redeemers to attend to all your needs. Shenema, Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam. So where are you? Your accommodation, you're in the royal suite. In addition, and who oversees all these amenities to make sure that they're in place? the most special people in existence. Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam. It's supposed to be Micho. B'schus Moshe achaltem esamon. What do we have? The man? That's b'schus Moshe. Shem vayad chaveri veko u'b'schus Aaron hikafti eschem an Yaakov. In the merit of Aaron, you were encircled with the clouds of glory. Shem Hashem holech lifnechem yomam b'aburonon. Uchsiv apostle until in poras honor lemoso. He spread the cloud to be a covering. The Shiva Anonim Hoyu, there were 7 clouds of glory. The Lamalo Mato, there was on the surface of the earth and above us, Ma'abaruchos Olam, encircling us on all 4 sides. Vechor Holech Lifneim, and the cloud went before us, give us direction. Umake Lohem Nechosh V'Akrabim, and would destroy all the snakes and the scorpions. Umashlam Esahorim Esamokim, and there was no such thing as an incline or an elevation. Everything was flat. They traveled on an even surface continuously. The surface hakotzim, and all the briars were all totally burnt. Umala Osha, and the smoke from all this being incinerated through the Anei from that leading cloud. And this pillar of smoke that went up, due to everything being consumed and burnt, all the kings of the east and west, who's coming out of the desert, like this billowing smoke, they understood something unusual is happening. Our garments we wore for 40 years, they did not deteriorate. Miraculous. The clothing the child wore as an infant, miraculously, those clothing never had to be changed. As he grew, the clothing grew with him. Never had to be replaced. Never wore out. Never had to be replaced. Habe'er b'schus Miriam. The bear is the merit of Miriam. Shom shira layom. Omer brachio. Okay, so. Yirmiyah Novi saying in the name of Hashem, did I treat you as if you were in the desert? You were treated like royalty, and even more than royalty. Because in the desert, it's not a location you have tranquility, or you're able to be accommodated as if you're in your palace. But you were in a palace with all its accommodation, and who oversaw it, and the quality of accommodation. It's unequaled. But yet, we complained. What are you complaining? If you have everything anybody would hope for, seemingly, in the physical, why are you complaining? That's what Hashem is asking. That's what Yirmiyah is saying. But you complained. Why'd you take us in Egypt? You were slaves before. Now you're free men. Not only free men, what's he setting? Did I bring you into Midbar? Are you really in a desert in terms of what the reality is? So the bottom line is, so why did they complain? I'll give you an example. A person has no interest in being in a certain location. I'll put you into Alcatraz, Sing Sing. These are penitentiaries. You can't, once you're in there, you can't escape. But I'll fashion a room for you that in terms of its amenities, there's no such room in the world like the way it's going to be set up with all the luxuries, but you're there for the rest of your life. Otherwise, you could be a free man to go anywhere you want with minimum accommodations, minimum amenities. What would you choose if you want to be a free man? You're not going to Alcatraz, regardless how luxurious the accommodation is going to be. If you have an interest in studying Torah and being the God subject, you don't want distractions. This is the ultimate. But if you have no interest in the relationship, you put me in a palace with someone, I have no interest in being there. So what is it? It's incarceration. So that's the confirmation. If you could complain despite what it is, what does it say? As they say, the proof's in the pudding. You have no interest in the relationship. And that was the claim against Klal Yisrael. How could you complain if there's no basis to complain? The man, there were a few food items that did not take on the taste or the nourishment of that. What was that? Garlic, onions, and avatichim, and gourds. Because it's not good for a nursing woman when she nurses a child. Says, We had everything, but you know what happened to the onions and the garlic? You understand? I'm giving you everything under the sun, any imaginable amenity. But you know something? The salt is not the way I thought. I want Himalayan salt. You know, I don't want mine salt. I don't want sea salt. What are you talking about? If you're not happy with your situation, it's like you have a relation, a husband and wife. The husband accommodates the wife to the nth degree. But everything said and done, the old woman says, "So, how's your marriage? It's great, but." You understand? If your marriage, you're interested and you esteem and value, everything is just an incidental. If there's a but, that means there's a problem with the relationship. If the Jews themselves complain continuously, it's not the accommodation, it's the relationship. And once the relationship is a problem, everything's a problem, regardless of what Hashem provides. That's exactly what the Navi is saying. In the name of Hashem, that's proof in the pudding exactly where you stand. Okay, ready to start the halacha.